Alright, so this is part 2 of me writing some music. This current song is Electric Cups. Let's listen to it. It says part 1. The one thing to notice is we have a lot of piano texture down here. It's just there because I'm trying things out. Over here we have, it's not that, a lot of chord, our pad, again bass, and lead. The opening theme is just, I don't know, I don't like it at all. Let's just go to the next part. So that was part A. And it's also a part A repeated, different melody line. So this is more a subscript 2. And with an additional line of music added, the piano texture is just copy and pasted as is the bass line from the very beginning of that. Here's a transition. All right, there's something here that's interesting. Easier to see like this. So we have an introduction of a new theme. It's the 8 measures. Measure rests between the 8 measures. And then we immediately go into a second theme. Dum ba bum 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 ba da bum is a contrasting theme to here, even though you can see certain measures are very similar. And as soon as we hit here, we're repeating not the first part, but the second part. We've added more lines in, and this is partially just because I like this part more. And so depending on what you like, that's what you write. We've added another pad, then we've added notes from the pad into into more of a percussive piano sound. In our case, I think it's a Celeste. But you'll notice these aren't fully, they don't have all the notes because it muddies the sound if you have too many notes. So oftentimes when you write music, you just simply take notes out. Back to the part A of this part. So what's going on here? What I've done, excuse me, this is part B again of the second part of the song. Part A, part B. So we are now listening to part B for the third time. This is not usually how I write songs, but I like this part, so I put it in again. I wrote another melody, counter melody here. One thing you'll learn if you write a lot of music is when you have lines like this, It's easiest to put against the bass line that doesn't play. So you can hear this more clearly if you have only one note playing in the bass line. It's a little trick you can use when you compose on a computer because it's very visual in front of you. Another transition. Now to theme 3, or C. And that just repeats. So now let's go into FL Studios and load it up. Need to change the capture to FL Studio. And we're loading it up. The thing to note is that in the when I'm writing, depending on what I want the lead voices to be, is how I write the melody. It's not all just whatever comes to mind, because much of it is much more about, let's see, program not responding. I should have set this up beforehand. It's a lot less about having an exact idea of everything before, and more of an idea of knowing what you want and knowing how you can work with sounds. So I'm going to go over sounds right now. I've cut out, as you can see in here. This is the song cut up. That's at the actual file. So what I did is I sliced off and got rid of the first half. See, now it matches. And I did that because if you remember, I wasn't a big fan of the very beginning of this song. So the second time through, playing the introduction melody line, I put into a bell. I just got a lot of that nice echo. And this works because the notes are long. There's not a lot of these smaller notes. What would be 8 notes. The bass line is loud. Upon listening to this a few times, I began to think that all these notes in the bass line, because of the synth playing for the Cyrus synth. Is it the Cyrus synth? Citrus. It should be citrus. It's citrus because it's in a Y. Even though it's synth, so I guess it is citrus, spelled wrong. Here for our deep. The sound doesn't die right away, and so it muddies the sound a lot. Just to go back to where we were before. If these are longer, I don't like that as much as, because it makes it a lot more punchy to have the smaller sounds. So that's why I wrote, I went through and actually manually shortened almost all of those. For the melody line, we'll get to it in a little bit. Again, the citrus, just the orchestra one for this sound, or for the pad sound. Right, so the Sawyer, I like calling it Sawyer for some reason, it's in a glide mode, and that's the whole reason I chose this particular instrument for the vocal, or for the main melody line, is so that you can get that that twisting of the sound. It'd be much easier if I put a let's put this note underneath it, F. You can kind of hear it though. Maybe I can do it up here. The glide time is actually relatively low, and that's why it's not doing what I want to. Let's put it up all the way. So it's trying to glide from each note, so it's only supposed to be playing one sound, and it's supposed to just keep going note to note. So that's our melody sound. I'm not going to go into all of the mixers now until I have a more finished song. I'm just going through each part so I can show my nephew what I'm doing. Added in drums. Where are the drums? There. I'm using these settings. I don't really mess with the settings until I have a much more finished product, but this is a Contact 5 drum lab. So there's a bunch of different settings you can do. I'm keeping my music pretty basic for right now. This is just kind of a little happy march. The bass drum is usually just playing a lot. Oftentimes with the bass drum, I will go and put it to a mixer. And I usually use the Maximus mixer. And the reason why I'm pointing this out is the bass drum has a lot of high-pitched sounds. Put it in there. It's a little hard to hear, but it's got this kind of little raspy, high-pitched sound, and usually I think in my mind it interferes with the other higher sounds. So then I like to shut it off altogether. The glockenspiel wasn't playing. The glockenspiel will actually want to be on the mixer. I guess I'm doing this right now since I already know where it is. I'm going to put some reverb on it, probably a large hall reverb. Put 3 echoes on it. So that's that. Again, in music, oftentimes you create little introductions. This is actually from earlier in the song. I think it's this part right here, these measures. Cut them out, put them in. Again, this is why you'll see the cursor. This is also the same as this. So before the third theme, when you have strings like this, I've just added in, let's go them solo, go back to where we were. You'll notice these notes, not this one, but these ones are just simply octaved up. So we have what it seems like a false counter melody here, but it's mainly just an ornamentation of these chords already. So it's something you would do if you were a keyboardist and you just actually had a part where you were playing solo. You might add a few extra notes in, makes the song sound better. Get that punchy bass line, I really like that. Quite massive. Sounds a little weak. That doesn't sound electric cups enough for my tastes, which is why I have parts added with this. Let's just put some drums on. So the song is still a work in progress. I just simply jumped to what I had worked on from the last video. And the things to mainly point out is the first 8 measures are going to be deleted. I haven't deleted them yet. This will happen when you just write in my style, where you just write a bunch of music and then you try and throw it all up together into a single piece. It doesn't always work. It's not always meant to work. I have preconceptions when I come in. I like to have this lead sound. So I'm going to write a melody line that has a lot of jumps. So if we go back to the very end and just put only the melody on, there we go. But there's no reason this couldn't go. Or just maybe one. Because the whole point of using a sound like this is to get that jumping up. I haven't figured out what I want to do with the sounds. Whether I'm just going to keep that or not, whether I'm going to put other for the pads, these two being the pads. So yeah, this is the work in progress. The drums, of course, aren't done at all. Whenever I write very basic. When I usually start it off, I usually write very basic drums. So for the drums, that's pretty much it. It's a little bit more something going on with bass drums, but that's not really worth writing home about. The beginning, if I was just to play it's nice, but I don't see what this has to do with anything. I could actually, though, replace it with the citrus here. Oops. Go into sequence, ear gate. And I might do something like that where I so it doesn't really get to what I'm thinking of. But now that I've written this much, I have a concept for the song, and now I can move ahead and actually refine it. And so that's the video for today. Thank you for watching.